I discovered my wife's affair with her boss, and now she's claiming half our $1.2 million estate, even though I caught her pouring money into his offshore account last month, and she's threatening to sue me for custody of our kids over a lie she planted to hide her betrayal. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how I found out my wife was cheating on me with her boss, but here I am. The craziest part. It all started with something so small, so seemingly insignificant, that I almost missed the signs entirely. But then little things started piling up: weird texts, late nights at work, a sudden obsession with her phone, and a change in her attitude that didn't sit right. Her name's Lisa. We've been married for 10 years, and honestly, I thought we had a pretty good life. We built a decent estate together, worth about $1.2 million, and I always believed we were in it for the long haul. She's the kind of woman who always knew how to push my buttons, but I figured that was just her personality: bitchy, sharp-tongued, and always ready with some snarky comment when she thought I was in the wrong. Still, I loved her, or at least I thought I did. At the start of last month, I noticed her acting distant. She'd brush me off when I tried to talk about our future, and she was spending a lot of time on her laptop after work. I also caught her sneaking her phone into the bathroom, which was unusual because she'd never done that before. I didn't say much at first. Maybe I thought I was overreacting. But then I saw the bank statements. I was casually going through our finances, just trying to get a handle on our investments, when I noticed a strange transfer. It was a large sum, $50, $0, sent to an offshore account in her name. But I knew she had no reason to be transferring money out of our joint account unless she was planning to hide something. I looked at the transaction again and my stomach dropped. I confronted her that night. I asked about the offshore account, about the transfer, and her face went blank for a second. Then she snapped. "It's none of your business," she spat. "You're just paranoid. I handle our money, not you." That's when I realized she'd been lying all along. She's always been the type to manipulate and deny, even when caught red-handed. It was like she was trying to gaslight me into doubting my own instincts. I pressed her harder, and she finally admitted she met someone at work, her boss, Daniel. Said she was just having an affair, but that it didn't mean anything. She claimed I was overreacting, that I was insecure, that I was just jealous because she was successful and gorgeous and I was a loser who couldn't keep her happy. That was the moment I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was throwing everything away for some arrogant, self-centered asshole. The emotional roller coaster hit me hard. First, there was shock. How could she do this to me? We had everything: the house, the money, the kids. I had worked my ass off to build that estate, to give us a future, and now I was faced with the reality that she was cheating, lying, and planning to take half of it all in a divorce. The anger was overwhelming. I wanted to smash something, to yell, to make her feel the pain she was causing me. But underneath all that, there was a deep sense of betrayal, a feeling of loss I couldn't quite shake. She kept lying, of course. Said she was just stressed, that Daniel was just a friend with benefits, that I was paranoid and crazy. But the more she lied, the more I saw through her. She's always been good at spinning stories, but her lies didn't hold up. I knew she was planning something bigger, maybe even trying to set me up or make me look like the bad guy so she could get full custody of the kids. That's when I decided I had to do something. I couldn't just sit back and let her take everything without a fight. I started planning, quietly, carefully, waiting for the right moment to strike back and get my revenge. I'll tell you, the feeling of betrayal is like a poison. It eats away at you, makes you question everything you thought was real. But I also learned that you can't let it break you. You have to stand up, fight for what's yours, and never let someone else's lies define you. If she thinks she can walk all over me and walk away with half our estate, she's got another thing coming. I've got plans, and I'm not done yet. After I found out about the offshore transfer and her affair with Daniel, I didn't sleep much that night. My mind kept racing, trying to piece together her motives, her lies, and what her next move might be. I knew Lisa. She's always been manipulative, bitchy, and good at hiding her true intentions. But this time, I was determined not to let her get away with it. The next morning, I started digging deeper. I pulled up every bank statement, every transaction. I wanted to see if there was more hidden money, more secret accounts. I also had a private investigator look into her activity with Daniel. Turns out, she'd been meeting him at fancy hotels, sending him money for expenses, and even funneling some of our joint estate into offshore accounts under different names. It was a tangled web, and I was just beginning to see how far she'd gone. While I was gathering evidence, Lisa was acting even more bitchy and dismissive. She'd throw tantrums, calling me paranoid, accusing me of reading her emails and stalking her. She insisted she loved me, that her affair was just a mistake, and that Daniel was just a rich, arrogant jerk, who she was only screwing around with because I wasn't satisfying her anymore. She said I was controlling, jealous, and that I was going to ruin everything if I kept pushing. But I wasn't about to back down. I knew this wasn't just about her cheating, it was about her trying to take everything we built, and I was ready to fight for what's rightfully mine. One night I caught her pouring money into Daniel's offshore account again. It was a transfer of $75 just last month. That was the final straw. I realized she was actively laundering money, probably trying to hide her affair and her plans to split the estate. I knew I had to act fast. If she was willing to risk everything for Daniel, she'd also be willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate her way out of any situation. So I sat down and drafted a plan. First, I hired a lawyer who specialized in high-net-worth divorces. I wanted to make sure I could protect my assets and fight her for custody of the kids if she tried to pull some stunt. I also had the private investigator track her more closely. Turns out, she'd been meeting Daniel almost daily at different locations, always with a cover story about working late or meeting clients. I had enough proof now to show her reckless spending, her offshore transfers, and her affair. The biggest shock came when I found out she had been secretly recording conversations with her boss. She thought she was clever, but I got my hands on some of her recordings. She'd been bragging about how she was going to take everything from me, and how she deserved to live like a queen with Daniel's money. Hearing her own words made my blood boil. She was so confident, so sure she could get away with it all. But she had no idea I was one step ahead. I started to realize she was planning to sue me for custody, claiming I was an unfit father because I was controlling and jealous. She was trying to spin her lies, make me look like the bad guy, and walk away with half the estate. And she was threatening to do it all if I didn't give her what she wanted. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to let her destroy me or take my kids and my money without a fight. I had to retaliate, but in a way that would hit her where it hurt, financially, emotionally, and legally. I began preparing my own counterattack. I documented everything: her secret meetings, her offshore transfers, her threatening emails. I also started gathering witnesses, friends who saw her sneaking around, her coworkers who could testify about her inappropriate behavior at work. I knew that if this went to court, I would have the evidence to prove her lies and her betrayal. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her steal from me. I was going to fight back, and I was going to win. In the meantime, I kept my cool around her. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing how much this was hurting me. But inside, I was burning. Every time she called me paranoid or accused me of spying, I just nodded and kept my plans close. I knew she'd try to spin her story, but I had the facts, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of this. This whole situation is a nightmare I never saw coming. I trusted her, I loved her, and I thought we had a solid life. But now I see her for what she really is: a liar, a cheat, and someone willing to destroy everything we built for her own selfish gain. I don't know how this will end, but one thing for sure: I'm not backing down. Not now, not ever. The more I uncovered, the more I realized just how deep Lisa's betrayal went. It wasn't just about her cheating with Daniel. It was about her actively trying to wipe me out financially and emotionally. I found emails where she was coordinating with lawyers to draft papers that would give her half of everything, including the estate, even though I had caught her red-handed pouring money into offshore accounts. She was planning her escape, and I was starting to see her for what she truly was, a manipulative, selfish woman who would do anything to get what she wanted. I spent days compiling all my evidence, making sure every transaction, every secret meeting, every lie was documented. I wanted her to see I wasn't going to roll over. I also hired a private investigator to get more footage of her and Daniel. The guy followed her for weeks, snapping pictures, recording conversations. I needed proof to show the court how reckless and dishonest she was, especially if she tried to accuse me of abuse or instability to get custody of our kids. Meanwhile, Lisa was not making things easier. She ramped up her bitchy attitude, throwing tantrums, calling me names, accusing me of spying on her. She claimed I was paranoid, jealous, insecure. She said I was trying to control her, that I didn't trust her because I was afraid of losing her. But the truth was she was the one sneaking around, not me. Every time I confronted her, she'd deny everything, then turn around and accuse me of ruining her life. She even had the nerve to say she loved me and that I was overreacting. Yeah, right. One night, I decided to confront her directly. I told her I had enough evidence to bury her and I wanted her to come clean. She scoffed, rolled her eyes, and told me I was just jealous of her success, that I was a pathetic loser who couldn't keep her satisfied. She said she was done pretending, and that she'd take everything, the house, the kids, every penny. That's when she threw in her threat about suing me for custody, claiming I was an unfit father because I controlled her too much. That's when I snapped. I told her I was done playing her games. I showed her the recordings, the bank statements, the pictures of her with Daniel. She looked stunned for a second, then her bitchy smile returned and she spat. "You're crazy. You're just jealous because Daniel is better in bed than you ever were." That was the moment I knew she was beyond saving. She was so convinced she could manipulate her way out of this mess, she didn't even realize how much I saw through her. But I also felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief because I finally had the evidence to fight her, and anger because I'd been so blind for so long. I kept asking myself how I missed all these signs, how I let her push me aside and pretend everything was fine. I thought we were solid, but she was plotting her escape from day one. I knew I had to act fast before she took everything and disappeared with Daniel. I started talking to my lawyer about how to protect my assets and set up a plan to counter her accusations. I also began preparing for the worst, a nasty divorce, custody battles, her trying to spin stories to make me look like the villain. I knew Lisa was capable of anything at this point. She's always been good at lying, twisting facts, and making herself the victim. I had to stay sharp, stay focused, and keep my emotions in check. The thing I couldn't shake was the feeling of betrayal. I had loved her, trusted her. We had a life, a future, and she threw it all away for some arrogant boss who probably only cared about her wealth and status. I kept replaying moments from our past, wondering where I went wrong, why I didn't see how much she hated our life together. But I also knew I couldn't let her get away with this. Not without a fight. Every new discovery made me more determined. I was going to expose her lies, protect what was mine, and make sure she paid for what she did. She thought she could walk all over me, threaten to take our kids, threaten to ruin me financially. But she didn't realize I had a few tricks up my sleeve. I was preparing to turn her world upside down, and I was ready to do whatever it took to come out on top. By now, I had everything I needed to make her regret her choices. The recordings, the bank statements, the photos of her sneaking around with Daniel, everything was stacked in my favor. I stayed quiet, biding my time, letting her believe she still had control. But behind the scenes, I was working with my lawyer to craft a strategy that would crush her plans and protect my assets. One of the biggest moves I made was hiring a forensic accountant. I needed to trace every offshore transfer, every hidden dollar, every suspicious transaction. It took weeks of digging, but I finally uncovered a pattern. Lisa had been funneling money into multiple offshore accounts, using shell companies and fake invoices. The amounts added up to hundreds of thousands, maybe even over $1 million, all hidden away to shield her from the divorce or any financial claims I might make. She thought she was so clever, hiding her tracks, but she underestimated how thorough I could be. The evidence was damning. I had her on tape bragging about how she'd take everything from him, referring to me, and how she'd live like a queen with Daniel's money. I had the bank statements showing the offshore transfers, the emails where she discussed her next steps to secure her future with Daniel. I even had her admitting she was planning to sue me for custody, claiming I was unstable and controlling, all while she was secretly cheating and laundering money. I was furious, but I kept my composure. I knew this was a war of attrition. I had to stay calm, stay strategic. I started working on a detailed timeline of her moves, cross-referencing all the evidence and preparing my own legal documents. I also contacted some of her coworkers, friends, anyone who might have seen her sneaking around or acting suspiciously. I knew the court would need witnesses, and I was determined to have as many as possible testify to her deceit. At the same time, Lisa was getting more aggressive. She started calling me names, accusing me of ruining her life, but I saw through her act. She was trying to manipulate the situation to make me look like the villain so she could walk away with everything. She even threatened to turn the kids against me, claiming I was an abusive monster who was jealous and controlling. That was the last straw. I knew I had to be ready for her next move. One night she stormed into my office furious. She called me every name in the book, said I was a loser, a paranoid lunatic, and that I'd regret this. But I didn't flinch. I calmly told her I had enough evidence to end her game and that she'd be surprised how much I knew. I told her I was prepared to go to court and fight for my rights, for my kids, and for what was rightfully mine. I saw her eyes flicker with panic for a second, then she masked it with her bitchy smirk. She knew she was losing control and she hated it. Meanwhile, I kept building my case. I worked with my lawyer to draft a comprehensive divorce petition, one that would expose her lies, her offshore accounts, her affair, and her malicious intent to take everything I worked so hard for. I also made sure to include the evidence of her trying to manipulate the court with false claims about my parenting. I wanted her to see I was serious, that I wasn't going to be pushed around anymore. One thing I learned through all this: people like Lisa think they can get away with anything because they're good at lying and manipulating. But if you dig deep enough, if you stay patient and strategic, you can turn their game against them. I was ready to fight, and I wasn't going to let her steal my life without a fight. The next step was to file everything, to make sure the court saw her for what she truly was: an unfaithful, deceitful woman who was willing to destroy everything for her own greed and selfishness. I knew this was just the beginning. She might have thought she had the upper hand, but I had the truth, and I was going to use it to come out on top. If she wanted war, she'd get it. And I was prepared to do whatever it took to win, for my kids, for my dignity, and for the life I deserved. The legal battle was in full swing now, and I could feel the pressure mounting. Lisa's threats to sue for custody, claiming I was unfit, kept echoing in my mind. She was trying to spin her lies, but I had enough evidence to blow her entire story apart. The offshore accounts, the recordings, the witness testimonies, they all painted a clear picture of her deceit and greed. But the most unsettling thing was how far she was willing to go to get what she wanted. I remember the day I finally sat down with my lawyer to go over the strategy for the custody hearing. We had to prepare to counter her accusations, which she was already planting with her friends and even some of her coworkers. She was telling everyone I was an unstable, jealous husband who was trying to control her. She was using her charm and bitchy attitude to spin a web of lies, trying to make herself the victim. But I knew better. We filed for divorce, and I made sure every piece of evidence was included. I also hired a child psychologist to prepare a report on my parenting skills, which I knew she would try to undermine. I wanted the court to see I was a loving, responsible father, not the monster she was trying to paint me as. Meanwhile, Lisa was ramping up her attacks. She started showing up at our house unannounced, throwing tantrums and yelling at the kids, trying to turn them against me. It was clear she was desperate to sway the court and get full custody. One night I caught her in the act of trying to manipulate the kids. She was telling them I was mean, that I didn't love them, and that they'd be better off with her. The look in her eyes was cold, calculating, like she was trying to set herself up for victory. I knew I had to act fast to protect my relationship with the children. I sat down with them and explained that their mother was upset but that I loved them no matter what. I made it clear that I was fighting for them, that I'd always be there. I didn't want her to succeed in turning them against me, but I knew it was going to be a tough battle. Meanwhile, I kept gathering more evidence. I had the recordings of her bragging about her plans, the bank statements showing her draining our joint accounts, and the offshore transfer receipts. I also hired a private investigator to get more footage of her meeting Daniel and spending money recklessly. All this was going into the court filings, and I was confident it would expose her true character. Then, the day of the custody hearing arrived. I was nervous but prepared. I presented all my evidence, showing her pattern of deceit, her affair, her financial crimes, and her manipulative tactics. I called witnesses, friends, coworkers, a babysitter who saw her sneaking out late. At night, I argued that her behavior was reckless, selfish, and unfit for raising children. I could see her trying to maintain her bitchy attitude, but behind her smirk I saw the cracks forming. She knew she was losing. The judge listened carefully, and after hours of testimony, I felt a glimmer of hope. I knew I had done everything I could to prove my case. When the judge finally announced the ruling, I felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. I was awarded primary custody of the kids, with supervised visitation for Lisa. The court also ordered her to pay back the money she had laundered and to settle all financial claims. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was enough to put her in her place and protect what mattered most: my children and my future. After the hearing, Lisa was furious. She stormed out, screaming, calling me every name in the book. She threatened to appeal, to ruin me financially, to take everything I had left. But I knew I had done the right thing. I'd fought for my family, my reputation, and my hard-earned estate. I had exposed her lies, her greed, her betrayal, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Now I'm rebuilding my life. The estate is still ours, and I've taken steps to secure it from her legal claims. The kids are happier, and I've started therapy to deal with the emotional scars. I've learned a lot through this nightmare about trust, about deception, and about the importance of standing up for yourself. Lisa might have thought she could manipulate her way to success, but in the end, the truth always comes out. And I'm proof of that. It's been a brutal lesson, but I'm stronger now. If you're ever in a similar situation, remember, gather your evidence, stay calm, and fight for what's yours. Don't let anyone cheat, lie, or manipulate their way into your life and take everything you've worked for. Because in the end, honesty and integrity are what truly matter. Looking back now, I realize how much this whole ordeal changed me. I used to believe in the fairness of things, in the idea that honesty and hard work would always prevail. But Lisa's betrayal shattered that illusion. Still, it also taught me a brutal but necessary lesson. You can't trust blindly, and sometimes the only way to protect what's yours is to fight dirty but smart. The aftermath has been a roller coaster. The estate is shaken, but I managed to hold on to most of it, thanks to the evidence I gathered and the legal battles I fought. The kids are growing up a little more cautious, a little more aware of how treacherous people can be. I stay close to them, making sure they know their father is their safe place, no matter what their mother tries to spin. Lisa, of course, didn't take the loss well. She's still trying to manipulate the situation, trying to get full custody, and even threatening to sue me for emotional distress, claiming I was abusive and controlling. I laugh now because I know her game. She's angry, desperate, and more than a little bitter, but I've learned to keep my distance from her drama. I've moved on, focusing on rebuilding my life and making sure my kids are shielded from her chaos. What's most surprising is how much I've grown from this experience. I used to be naive, trusting her implicitly. Now I see through the lies and the bullshit. I learned that people like Lisa will do whatever it takes to get what they want, even if it means destroying others in the process. And I also learned that sometimes the only way to win is to play their game better. If I could give advice to someone in a similar situation, it would be this: don't ignore the warning signs. Trust your instincts and don't be afraid to dig deep. Gather evidence, stay calm, and build your case. Protect your assets, your reputation, and most importantly, your kids. Because in the end, the truth will come out and justice will prevail, even if it takes time and effort. Honestly, I feel a strange sense of closure now. The pain of betrayal still lingers, but it's dulled by the knowledge that I fought for my life, my family, and my dignity. I can finally breathe easier, knowing I didn't let her get away with everything. And I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar finds the strength to stand up, fight back, and never let someone else's lies define your future. Because you deserve better. You deserve the truth. And in the end, that's all that really matters.